Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I'm looking at the rundown of games for this weekend and going, you know, there's a lot of top 10 teams who are either underdogs or favored by not nearly as many points as you might think. Tony, I'm thinking this might be a real interesting weekend of college football.
I agree. I was putting this. We put 10 games together here to talk about the 10 biggest games of the weekend, and there's some interesting stuff there. Some games have lost how interesting they could be, such as Iowa State and Oklahoma. But there's still some things to talk about, and certainly Oregon going on the road as a road dog this weekend will be one to watch. Tom, let's first start with we're going to get run down by kickoff time. So we'll start with Michigan State, Ohio State. If you want more of that, you can check out our Thursday show, which Tom and I talked about Michigan State. So that there's more of that there than we're going to give you right here. But what I want to talk to you, Tom, about is Michigan State's pass defense, because we both agree Ohio State's going to be able to throw the ball on them. Michigan State gave up 488 yards passing to Western Kentucky. That's,
is that a lot?
It's a lot. And the last 3 weeks, they've given up on average 431 yards passing to Big Ten teams. The stat that interests me, Tom, though, is this season, Michigan State has faced 10 more passes per game than anybody else in the Big Ten. And I don't think that's because of necessarily, yes, they have played Purdue and they have played Western Kentucky, but other teams have played Purdue. Now, if you take just Big Ten games out, they're facing 10 more passes than anybody else. And the distance from 1 to 13 is like 11 passes per game more. And then from 13 to 14, it's another 9. So opponents are seeing something with this Michigan State defense that they feel they can take advantage of, because it's not necessarily like, oh, we can't run the ball against Michigan State. There's something they're seeing to say, like, let's just throw the ball on these guys.
Well, if you look at the yards per attempt in both the rush and the pass, I mean, if you're an Ohio State fan, how are you feeling about the Ohio State defense right now? Are you feeling like, great, this is one of the most fantastic Ohio State defenses I've ever seen?
Not so much.
Not so much? Okay. So Michigan State is giving up more yards per rush attempt. Michigan State's rush defense is actually pretty decent. They're 15th in the country in yards per rush for an opponent, 3.3, which is 0.2 of a yard worse than Ohio State. So that they're fine on the ground. They're not giving up a ton, but they're not quite as good as Ohio State. Yards per pass attempt. Ohio State. How are Ohio State fans feeling about their pass defense right now, Tony? Good? Really good?
No.
On a scale of good to truly outstanding.
Good.
Good, yeah. And then on a scale from good to not good?
Not good.
Not good. Okay. So Ohio State giving up 6.9 yards per pass attempt, 35th in the country, which is still, it's not as bad as it feels like probably for Ohio State fans, but it's not great. Guess who's 44th in the country, giving up 0.2 of a yard more per play than Ohio State is? Why, it's Michigan State, 7.1 yards per pass attempt. Whatever Ohio State fans feel about their defense, Michigan State has not been as good. And when you look at Ohio State yards per pass attempt, Ohio State is third in the country. There are 3 teams that are at 10 yards per pass attempt or better. Ohio State at 10.0. Coastal Carolina, which runs essentially a modern version of the triple option. So it's very run heavy. And then the pass is like, surprise, they're 10.7. Army number 1 at 12.7, which is exactly the same thing. The team right behind Ohio State is Air Force, which again, so it is 3 teams that run some variant of the triple option where the pass is like this massive, wacky change up. Ohio State is the only one in there that's 10.0. Interestingly, Georgia at 9.7 is 5th, which again, they're a run first kind of team, it feels like, but not to the degree that the other teams are that I talked about there. But Ohio State is the team that they don't need the run to set up the pass. Like, they're just throwing for 10 yards an attempt with or without the run. This seems like a very bad matchup to Michigan State to me. And, I think Michigan State can move the ball on Ohio State, but this seems like it's not quite a name your score game for Ohio State, but I feel like Ohio State's going to put up 20 points in both halves probably. And, there's a possibility this one looks like the Purdue game did last week, where Ohio State just boom, 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 boom touchdowns. And if Michigan State gives them a short field or two, this could get out of hand. Michigan State's going to score. I think this is going to look fairly similar to the Purdue game. Probably not quite as many points for Ohio State. Maybe not as many points for Michigan State, but right in that same range. I picked 45-24 on yesterday's show. It should be comfortable, but not really a blowout. But against a top 10 team, that's a pretty good game.
Yeah, I went 52-24, so we both pick Ohio State to cover there. Tom, let's now move to a game that I didn't know we would be talking about at the start of the season. Number 10, Wake Forest, and we don't have to talk long about it. Number 10, Wake Forest at Clemson. Clemson Tigers 7-3 on the season, 5-2 in conference play. They've stormed back. I don't know if that means they're winning the Atlantic or the Coastal right now, but they are favored by 4.5 points. I'm just looking at what Clemson's offense has been getting better. Hold on, I don't know that that's true. Last week they played, and I should have brought it up because I've got some notes here, but. Last week, DJ Uiagalelei was when I played UConn. Was that last week or the week before? The DJ was 21-44 passing for 241 yards with a touchdown and an interception. And Clemson had 129 yards rushing in that game. And this is not the kind of offense that can, inspire anybody. I do think maybe they can score against Wake. Are we going to see a little bit of a shootout here? Tom, the last time Clemson lost to Wake Forest was 2008. Do you remember who Clemson's starting quarterback was back then?
Was that, 2008? Was that a Charlie Whitehurst team?
No, that would have been, I think, before that, or it was Colin Harper, the Colin Harper era, which I had forgotten about.
Yes.
That I think bridged maybe between Whitehurst or maybe Woody Dantzler and then eventually Taj Boyd. I think Taj Boyd was 2009 or so.
One of the great interchangeable Clemson quarterbacks before Taj Boyd showed up.
So, yes, I had forgotten about him. So, Tom, how do you feel about this one? I can see Wake Forest winning it. I can see Clemson just being it's a 24-21 type of smudge.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson has kind of gotten back from the land of the dead now, and they're going to end up with a record that's it wasn't a great season, but it wasn't a completely disgraceful 5-7 kind of season. So they're better, but I do kind of wonder how they're going to keep up with Wake Forest. I mean, Wake Forest does not have a very good defense, but they can score some points. We talked about yards per play. Clemson, number 81 in the country on the ground, 4.0 yards per play, yards per carry, behind such notable college football powerhouses as Kansas, Boston College, Northwestern, Notre Dame, and Old Dominion. Lots of big names there. So they're behind all of those. And then, Tony, would you like to guess where in the country, out of the 130 teams in the entire great United States of ours, where does Clemson rank out of those 130 teams in yards per pass attempt this season?
Boy, I'm guessing it's in the 120s.
It is, in fact, in the 120s. It is exactly 120. They're 5.7 yards per pass behind such college football powerhouses as Northwestern. Hey, there's that name again. Northwestern. Have you paid attention to Northwestern's offense this year and what an absolute disgraceful pile of garbage it's been? They're running the ball and passing the ball better than Clemson on a yards per play basis. Seems bad. Seems kind of bad to me, IMO.
Are you saying that Clemson would be doing better right now if they still had Hunter Johnson, who transferred to Northwestern?
I don't think Hunter Johnson, I don't think has played very many of Northwestern's. I mean, let's enter the confessional for a moment. I have made it a point to not watch a whole lot of Northwestern football this year because I'm trying to do some things for my mental health. So I'm pretty sure, though, that Hunter Johnson has not been Northwestern's main quarterback this season. So not sure that would have helped anything. But honestly, looking at the numbers, not sure it could have hurt very much.
Colin Harper could be leading this Clemson team to big time wins this year. So we'll see how that one goes. I don't know if it's one of the games I'm going to have on at 12 p.m. Maybe, I don't know. Uh, Tom, let's move to what would have been a huge game. What was supposed to be the game of the year in the Big 12. Now it's just a game of the year of this year. Iowa State at number 13, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is out of it. So this doesn't really, I don't think, has too much impact on the college football playoffs, other than Oklahoma State kind of needs Oklahoma to remain highly ranked so that they can get a quality win out of it. Did you see Matt Campbell this week, Tom, when asked about the not competing for the goal of winning the Big 12, and he's like, whoa, 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 that was never my goal. My goal has never been to win. My goal has only been to have the best version of this team this season that we could, and also to have the most together team in Iowa State history. So, Tom, the idea that your coach's goal is not to win, but it's just to be as good as they can possibly be, and there's no set, we want this stair step, we want this stair step. We just really just want to be. It's about us, and I know Ryan Day says it's about us, but there's some different levels there. Why can't he be disappointed that they did not compete for the Big 12 championship? Does that make him look bad that he didn't achieve his goal? Because right now, as he said, everything that they've laid out is still in front of them. And I'm like, you started the season ranked 7th. Is it really?
Yeah, that didn't play real well with me. And I feel like I am much more on the Matt Campbell defender side of things, because there's a tremendous amount of Matt Campbell slander anytime they lose a game, that people feel like, well, I thought they were supposed to be good this year. It's like, you look at the historical track record of Iowa State, and what he's doing there is still borderline miraculous. But this gave off some real, you remember when Butch Jones did the Champions of Life thing? This gave me some real Butch Jones vibes, and that's not a great thing. And, I think you have to understand that with college football coaches, sometimes when they're talking to the media, they're actually talking to their team through the media, and they don't want to put out, they don't want to put out the idea that, well, this season was a disappointment, or this season fell flat, or we have nothing left to play for. We've missed out on our goals. This is kind of like one of these like happy talk, we still have lots to play for, don't all opt out for the bowl game, even though it's not the bowl game we thought we were going to go to. That's kind of how that all tracked to me. But yeah, like that, you're getting paid a bunch of money and you're getting talked about for jobs that are a substantial step up from Iowa State, where the Champions of Life nonsense is not really going to play real well. So, is this in fact the most together Iowa State team in history? I would submit that it probably is not. So they probably haven't reached their goals there either. Again, Matt Campbell is a dynamite college football coach, and there are a lot of programs that would be very, very fortunate to have him. I still think Nebraska, I think Trev Albert should be crawling over broken glass to go try and hire Matt Campbell if he's available. They've committed to Scott Frost for another year because reasons, but I'm not trying to slander Matt Campbell, but yeah, that whole thing just didn't really play well with me.
No, I think maybe it would be beneficial for Iowa State if they did have a bunch of players opt out for the bowl game. That way you can just start spring practice with the bowl game and get the younger guys all of the reps they need. It also reminded me, do you remember when Josh Heupel this early this season said he liked the way his Tennessee Volunteers were walking upstairs?
I do remember that. And, that's a real testament to the condition that Butch Jones left the program in. Yes.
Because before they weren't able to, they were, kept trying to walk down the upstairs. And it's like, no, you can't do that. You're doing it entirely wrong.
Tennessee football. Why do you let your coaches talk? That seems like where that thing, where the train seems to try to kind of jump the tracks for them more often than it should.
Yeah. Tennessee had to turn off the escalators because players didn't know how to use them. So it's just, you know what? Let's just turn them all into stairs.
That's UConn's thing. That's an old UConn thing. No escalators. We're going to take the stairs. We're going to earn our way. That's there's actually a UConn blog named No Escalators for that reason. I think that was an old Jim Calhoun or Kevin Ollie thing. Yeah. So so anytime you can put yourself in the class of UConn as an athletic department, you pretty much have to do it.
You have to do it. Let's move to the 2:30 game. Georgia Tech at Notre Dame. And the only reason this is being mentioned is because Notre Dame is still in this thing. I was looking at some Notre Dame stats. and it's all very average. It's a sandwich with white bread, and I don't know that there's any bologna or any like. It's like a chopped ham sandwich with
It's a
no
mayonnaise
cheese.
sandwich. Notre Dame
Oh,
football this year is a mayonnaise sandwich.
like their leading receiver is their tight end by a lot, by like 20 receptions. Second leading receiver in terms of catches is their running back, and but that's Jack Cohn. I mean, he looks for these outlets, and he's very in tune with his receivers. But Georgia Tech has had some games. They haven't been blown out a bunch, and these are like losses by like 10 or 15. But I am not going to be watching this game. And Notre Dame just hanging around, hanging around. I think the best thing for America though is that Cincinnati has beaten them, and you feel like that would be their ceiling. Except we know sometimes head-to-head matters, sometimes it doesn't. Who know? Who's to say?
I really just wanted to say pass when you brought this game up and just move on to the next one. But I'm going to just read you through. We're talking yards per play this week, so we're going to just. I'm not even going to give you the category. Just know it's in some order. I'm not even going to scroll back up to the top of the page as to see whether this is opponent rush per average per carry, or opponent average per pass, or Notre Dame average per pass, or Notre Dame average per carry. Because guess what? It doesn't matter. Here's their national rankings: 41st, 40th, 79th, 49th. Don't do it. Do not do this to America again, College Football Playoff Committee. It's not like they've played this murderous schedule. They've played trash teams. They're an absolute mayonnaise sandwich this year. Do not make us waste another New Year's Eve. Don't do it. Baylor bailed you out, so you aren't going to have to do it with Oklahoma. Don't make us waste another national championship weekend or semifinal weekend watching Notre Dame lose 31-3 to Georgia or Ohio State or whoever they play, because I don't want to eat a mayonnaise sandwich. And really, I would ask that you don't make us. Thank you for your time.
Thinking you might need a moveon.org petition where we would get millions of signatures to make sure that this doesn't happen. Or you can just call into the teleconference and be like, Mr. Barta, please, please, Mr. Barta, don't do this to America. It's been a tough 2 years.
Notre Dame put hard times on my family, Daddy. that's going to be ESPN too. Notre Dame put hard times on my TV ratings, Daddy. Because the game's over in the middle of the second quarter.
That is true. Maybe one of the teams that can save us from that is a 2-loss Alabama team, which sounds terrible to say. But let's move to the Alabama 3:30 kick. Number 21 Arkansas at number 2 Alabama. Alabama favored by 21 points. Alabama's had 3 SEC games this season settled by 1 score, so that's something. For me, the last time I hopped on the Arkansas bandwagon, they lost 37-0 to Georgia. So I'm not so keen on them right now. Arkansas's best win so far this season is against Texas A&M. A lot of teams have a best win against Texas A&M. So I don't know how much of a best win that actually is. We know I saw Jameson Williams go over 1,000 yards this past week for Alabama, and everybody's like, oh, Jameson Williams. And you saw Jameson Williams come out and say Ohio State fans left him for dead or whatever. And so he's done the same thing for them. And how could Ohio State let him go? And to me, if this could have been any receiver almost, that because Alabama is so thin at receiver right now. It could have been Chris Olave. It could have been Jameson Williams. It could have been Jackson Smith and Jigba. Any of those guys transferred to Alabama, they're doing what Jameson Williams did. It could have been Nico Collins. It could have been Jaden Reed. I think Alabama just has John Mechie, and they're looking for somebody else who can do something. And Jameson Williams is somebody else who can do something. So congratulations to him. But I think I would probably take Arkansas and the points here because Alabama can't run the ball. Arkansas is, not so great there either, but can do enough. And right now, is Alabama playing well enough to beat another SEC West team by 21 right now? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, Arkansas, I think Arkansas gave Alabama actually a decent run last year, and Arkansas was not quite as good, and Alabama was much better last year. So I would be also tempted to take the points here. Arkansas has been like perfectly fine this year. They're again in all these yards per play, yards per rush attempt, they're 27th in the country. Yards per pass attempt, they're 28th in the country. The defense isn't quite that good, but they've been like fine. There's not like a obvious like gaping issue with this team, and Alabama's offensive line is not quite what it has been, and Alabama has some issues on the in the running back in terms of depth, and this is probably a game Alabama wins, but it's a game that you might be flipping over to this game in the second half, like Arkansas is within 7, Arkansas is within 10, something like that. Like this is at least going to be a plausibly interesting game for at least 3 quarters, and I mean, I wouldn't be completely shocked if this one went down to the wire and maybe Arkansas pulled it out. I don't think so. I think Alabama ultimately wins, especially at home. But this is at least one that's worth keeping an eye on, much more so than like the Notre Dame game or some of the other ones we talked about earlier.
Mm. Let's move to SMU at number 5, Cincinnati, and this is another where Alabama can get involved in terms of does Cincinnati, with an Ohio State loss or an Oregon loss, do they move up to 4? But then, like, can they? What is the how does Cincinnati make the playoff at this point, Tom? Because they obviously need some losses. Do they need losses in front of them? Do they just need one? Um, you know, how do they get in?
Well, you've got to figure the SEC is getting at least one in, right? I mean, I think you're more or less penciling Georgia in for one of the spots now, and so there's one. There is going to be, unless Wisconsin wins the Big Ten, there's going to be a Big Ten team in there. So there's 2. I think Cincinnati probably needs either Oregon or Oklahoma State to lose, and maybe both between now and the end of the college football the championship weekend. If Oregon loses and Oklahoma State loses, it's going to be Georgia. It's going to be the Big Ten champion. And then, I mean, the problem is, we're going to play this out as Ohio State wins out. So Ohio State wins out. So Michigan State has another loss. They're out of the conversation. Michigan has another loss. They're out of the conversation. Wisconsin has another loss. They're out of the conversation. If Oregon has a loss and Oklahoma State has a loss, you're not putting Notre Dame in over Cincinnati, because Notre Dame has been basically done what Cincinnati's done this year. It's not like Notre Dame is adding a bunch of great wins. Cincinnati is right now, 3 spots ahead of Notre Dame, has a head-to-head win over Notre Dame, and is playing a better schedule from here on out than Notre Dame. Like there's no way that if Cincinnati wins out, even if Cincinnati wins out by 1 point a game, there's no real argument to put Notre Dame in over them, because Notre Dame's not adding any quality wins. They're playing Georgia Tech and they're playing Stanford, and that's it. So I think that's the way Cincinnati gets in. But if Cincinnati just kind of wins out, but Ohio State, Oregon, Oklahoma State win out, and Alabama loses close to Georgia, or Alabama beats Georgia, I don't know that there's any way Cincinnati gets in, ahead of any of those teams.
Well, and I don't know that if Georgia, say, wins by 10 or less, 10 or fewer against Alabama, does Alabama slide to number 4? And does Cincinnati just stay at number 5? And we know Alabama's going to have better wins than Cincinnati, but we also know, like, one loss doesn't really seem to matter to the committee. Is the second loss going to be enough? And would they even go do a rematch because if Alabama stays in the playoffs with 2 losses, they have to be the number 4 seed, assuming Ohio State and Oregon both win out. So are they just gonna, hey, let's have a rematch and see which of these, whether Georgia can beat Alabama, or see which team is better? It's like, but we just saw this. Why do we need to see it again? I'm not convinced Georgia moves past 4 if they lose like within 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's I think there's, It's possible that they do 2 rematches in that scenario where it's Georgia versus Alabama again and Ohio State versus Oregon again. I mean, that's going to be probably a pretty hard sell for the public, but I'm not sure the committee necessarily cares. If it's, if Alabama beats Georgia, Alabama ends up number 1, and it's whoever's number 2, Ohio State or Oregon or whoever plays Georgia, because Georgia slides to 3s, and then you're playing Georgia in the Cotton Bowl, and then Oregon or Oklahoma State or Cincinnati, whoever it is, would play number 1 Alabama in the Orange Bowl in that scenario. So, I think that they would choose to avoid rematches, and I think if they have any option there, if Ohio State and Oregon win out, and Cincinnati wins out, you might put Cincinnati there. Or, if Oklahoma State wins out, you maybe put Oklahoma State there. I think they would be inclined to try and avoid having two separate rematches in the semifinals, because they generally would like to avoid those. But then you're really manipulating the rankings to just say, like, well, Alabama has 2 losses, but they only slide down 1 spot because they're still so pretty. Like, I mean, you're really not doing the stuff that you say you're trying to do. You're just setting up the semifinals you want to see, which, I mean, that's fine, but that's not what you say you're doing. Like, I think that's what everyone knows you're doing, but that's not what you say you're doing. And that would be pretty hard to justify to me, but that doesn't mean it won't happen.
Yeah, at that point, you're just pulling the curtain back and you're seeing that the Wizard of Oz is just some guy, and you've totally exposed yourself as, I don't want to say fraudulent, but kind of fraudulent.
Clown fraudulent, even.
Speaking of, Tom, let's move to Michigan at Maryland. Number 6, Michigan, heading to Maryland. Maryland playing for a bowl, but at this point, they're 5-5. They're 16-point underdogs. Maryland has lost 5 of their last 6. The only win, a 38-35 victory over Indiana. This is a game that earlier in the season we thought, well, let's see what Michigan's pass defense can do, because we know Maryland can throw the ball. They have since lost Dante Dimas, one of probably their top receivers, so that hurts. Maryland's allowed 2.2 sacks a game. Michigan will probably double or triple that in this one, and it's just a matter of, does Talia Tagovailoa hold onto the ball rather than fumble those? Are they killers? Can they overcome them? Can they just end in punts rather than turnovers and make Michigan drive down the field? Maryland has given up 380 yards passing the last 3 games. So it feels like Michigan is going to be able to move the ball. I am interested to see how much Maryland can move the ball, how much they can throw on this Michigan secondary. Again, it comes down to Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo. If they can keep those guys to like 3 total sacks, then maybe you're going to see like a 300-yard passing day. I'm thinking like 41-24 Michigan, but it feels like 24 might be a little bit too much for me right now.
Yeah, I'd go more in that like 38-17 kind of range, probably. Because I do think also, as soon as Michigan's up by enough that they feel comfortable, I think they're throttling down and getting ready for the Ohio State game. Like, get those starters out. Don't get anyone hurt. I think that especially with Blake Corum being banged up, I would not be surprised if you saw a lot of Donovan Edwards in the second half. Keep Hassan Haskins off the field. Just keep him healthy for the Ohio State game. Maryland can't run the ball at all this year. Their passing attack, since Demas got hurt, has really kind of withered a little bit. They're very middle of the pack right now in terms of like yards per attempt. They didn't do much of anything against Ohio State. This is a team that, as you said, this is a game that looked a lot more interesting at the beginning of the year than it does now. But hey, that's kind of how things go for Maryland football.
Very much so. Speaking of, let's continue to stick with the Big Ten for just a brief moment. Nebraska at Wisconsin. Since Wisconsin gave up 38 points to Michigan, they've given up 44 points total in those 6 games, in the next 6 games. Pretty good. Now, they have not played anybody of note offensively, but still, that's impressive. Running back Braylon Allen, the 17-year-old freshman, now 6 games in a row over 100 yards. I saw a Big Ten Network tweet from a Big Ten Network podcast saying that he is the first freshman to have 6 100-yard games, 100-yard rushing games at Wisconsin since 2001, which I don't believe that's true because PJ Hill did it as a redshirt freshman and Jonathan Taylor did it as a true freshman. I went and because that sounded to me like that sounds wrong. And then I went and looked, and you know who that freshman was in 2001, Tom? Following
2000.
Rondane.
I was going to say after Ron Dane, and the latest, who was the person between Ron Dane and James White? That was. Yeah. The problem is these guys just come off an assembly line, and
There were so many.
There are so many
stats.
interchangeable Wisconsin running backs between Ron Dane and James White. Was that Monty Ball?
No, Monty Ball was like 2012. It was Anthony
He
Davis.
was way. Oh, Anthony Davis. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, you know the Wisconsin running back who just runs for 1,000 yards behind 330-pound white guys. You know that one.
Yeah, like you had Anthony Davis, and then John Clay, PJ Hill, like all of these, and then you get into the Monty Ball, Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor, Corey Clement back there as well. It's like completely ridiculous. So I'm expecting this is only 9.5 points. Feels like I'll go ahead and take Wisconsin on that one, 10-0.
Yeah. I mean, the over under there is 42, and it's like I don't know that. I mean, unless Nebraska has quit, I don't know that you're necessarily getting there because what's Nebraska going to have? 13 points here, 17 points, maybe. I mean, maybe on the high end,
right? Yeah, 17 tops.
So 24-13 seems about right. 27-13 seems about right. Something like that. So yeah, I'd probably lay the points and think about the under, but yeah, 27-17 isn't crazy, and that would hit the over, which tells you a lot about the expectation about the explosiveness of this game.
Now, this next game, second to last game, and really could just be the last game, could be a shootout. 7:30 kick. Number 3 Oregon, 9-1 on the season. At number 23 Utah, 7-3 on the season. Both teams 6-1 in the Pac-12. Utah favored by 3. This is an over/under of 59. I think I'm looking at the over here because neither defense is all that great. Now, neither offense is super good, but I think both teams can routinely give up into the 20s and 30s, and both teams can score routinely into the 20s and 30s. So I'm thinking this is like a 30, 30, 27, 34, 31, maybe even higher than that. And whether Oregon gets Utah this time or Utah gets them the next time, I feel like Oregon is eventually going to lose one of these two matchups with Utah. And I think obviously with this being on the road, this would be the one. And so I don't know if I'm laying the points, but I'm picking Utah. That's how close I think this one can be. But I also think I think both teams can get into the 30s here, and not because the offenses are outstanding. I just think they're good enough. The defenses aren't great, although now I'm talking myself into the under, so I'm just going to avoid it altogether. But I do think Utah finally gets this one. Oregon has just been playing with fire the entire time, and I don't know if for America people should be rooting for Oregon in this one because of just the danger of what lurks in South Bend.
Oh, South Bend or a 2-loss Alabama team. Like, man, there's, I mean, if you could guarantee me that Notre Dame and a 2-loss Alabama team weren't in the playoff, I'd be fine with Oregon losing here. I do have some concerns because I'm not sure Oklahoma State's winning out, and I'm not sure Cincinnati's winning out, and it's just like, oh boy, like it's not out of the realm of possibility that we're at least having the is whoever the third big SEC team is at that point, like Ole Miss, or I don't know. Like that you're at least having, some of the SEC network honks like making no, the SEC should get 3 teams in the playoff. Like you're going to hear that at some point if a certain scenario comes true here. But yeah, I'm with you. Like go back and listen to all the stuff I said about Oklahoma last week going to Baylor. It was just like, they are going to get got at some point. Like they've been playing with fire forever. And this is not Cincinnati where you're playing with fire, but you're playing it in a terrible conference. Oregon has largely been playing a terrible schedule, but they've kind of been able to skate by a little bit. this feels like the week that they got. Like you have to go on the road. That's a tough place to play. You get altitude. Utah is a good team. It's a hostile atmosphere in Rice-Eccles Stadium. I mean, there's just a lot here that just feels like all the stuff you kind of got away with when you're playing UCLA in the Rose Bowl or playing Arizona on the road. Like that will eventually catch up to you. It feels like maybe this is the week that it catches up with them, but yeah, I am at the point where I would be fairly surprised if Oregon did, in fact, win out their last 3 games, because it's Utah, and then you get the Civil War against Oregon State, and then you probably get Utah again in a neutral site. That just doesn't feel like they're running the table with the way they've been playing right now.
I get concerned about what the possibility is of all heck breaking loose with an Oregon loss, and it's not going to be good. But I don't know who to blame in that one. Probably everybody's fault that things are the way they are this year.
It's everybody's fault but mine.
Last game that we don't really, I mean, the only reason I'm mentioning it, it's number 9 Oklahoma State at Texas Tech, is because Oklahoma State is still in this thing. Texas Tech, a 10-point underdog in this one. I would not be surprised to see Oklahoma State lose. They've got a really good defense, and Texas Tech is like, whatever at this point. Surprisingly bowl eligible and playing well enough after losing their coach, and also playing what were they, 5-3 when he was fired, something like that. And
yeah,
it's so here they are 6-4 on the season. They've hired their new coach. He's obviously out recruiting and doing things like that, so there's a lot of energy, but I don't know how the preparation is going. I don't know how prepared you need to be for Oklahoma State. So I'm never surprised by almost anything that happens in the Big 12, but I'll go ahead and take Oklahoma State. And I don't know that I don't know that I would lay the points, though.
No, I don't think I'd lay the points. There are places where in college football where you just, any road trip there is a little bit terrifying. Like for Ohio State fans, everyone immediately went West Lafayette. Like, yep. You don't want to have like, or Iowa cities like that. Like any trip to Iowa City is just automatically like very uncomfortable, very unnerving. Like it's just, you don't play well there. Washington State's like that in the Pac-12. Texas Tech is one of those places. Like this is a night game. It's in Lubbock. Lubbock is a million miles from anywhere. You every once in a while, is it Jones Stadium? I mean, like every once in a while, someone just falls on their butt there. It's a weird place. It's different than anyone else. They're throwing tortillas at you. Like it is a weird spot. And Texas Tech is just feisty enough this year that it's like, they might just do this. Like they were up. Were they up big last week against Iowa State? I watched that game and my brain has completely shut it out. I think they were up big against Iowa State and then blew it and then came back and won like 41-38 against Iowa State. They can score points. If you can get to 30 against Oklahoma State, I think you got a chance to win this. And I don't know if they can get to 30. Like it feels like if this is 24-21, Oklahoma State's going to win it. But if it's 31-27, I think Texas Tech has a chance. I don't think Oklahoma State's blown them out. I don't think I would take the points all day, every day. Take that 10. But yeah, I'm not a big believer in Oklahoma State right now. But they're just kind of like they're right in that playoff hunt where they're ninth, which sounds like they're way out of it. But so many of the teams ahead of them have to play each other that they're going to, Ohio State has to play 6 and 7. Number 1 and number 4, or number 1 and number 2 are going to play each other. If Oklahoma State wins out, if they beat Texas Tech and they I forget who they have next week, and then they've got presumably they have Oklahoma next week, and then would possibly play Baylor the week after that, because that would give Oklahoma their second loss in conference, and Baylor would have the tiebreaker over Oklahoma. So you might not have Bedlam and Bedlam 2 Electric Boogaloo, but whoever it is, you're playing a couple ranked teams. If they win out, I think they are like shockingly in the conversation, because it doesn't feel like they should be, but it's like that's a team that I think if Ohio State got Oklahoma State or Notre Dame in the playoff, like I think they would just be like skipping to the press conference to announce their semifinal bid. I don't think they're going to, because it feels like whoever wins the SEC is probably being set up to get the first round bye as per usual against, the Big 12 team or the whoever it is. But yeah, I think this one's a little feistier than you might think with, college football playoff contender versus team that has already fired its coach this year.
I think we could see like Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, if things kind of work out, and that would be very different. I don't know how ESPN would like that.
I do. They wouldn't. I mean, if you have Georgia and Ohio State in the semifinals, you're going to have TV audiences there. I mean, those are, as long as you have two big brand name teams, one in each of them semifinals, like it's not going to be a debacle. It's not going to be, Oklahoma State versus Cincinnati in one semifinal. So you're probably okay ratings wise, but yeah, they would much rather have Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama,
Notre Dame,
Alabama. Oh, no one wants that. Oh, yeah, Alabama versus someone. But no, I don't think that's going to be how it plays out, because I will believe that the committee will put in Oklahoma State and Cincinnati over a 2-loss Alabama team. I will believe that the moment that I see it, and not one moment sooner than that.
Yeah. Oklahoma State has the most points they've given up this season, 24. They did it twice. They did it at Texas and at Iowa State. So if Texas Tech can put 30 on them, that might be enough, because Oklahoma State has scored 30 4 times this year, 30 or more, and it's not something they do regularly. So that might be, if they're giving up that many points, it might be difficult for them to keep up. It's just a matter of, will they actually do that? So anything else, Tom, before we get out of here? Anything else you wanted to touch on? Anything you're keeping your eye on?
No, I feel like we've gone much longer than we typically do on these shows. So, I mean, this is the interesting time of year. This is the time of year when, there are not a ton of games that matter, but the ones that matter, like, really matter this time of year. So it is a fun time of year. And, this is typically SEC SoCon Challenge weekend. Mm-hmm. They've spaced that out, where some of the teams did that last week and some of them are doing it this week, to sort of, so you don't have like a week of just dead inventory for TV, because TV runs everything. But for a week that typically was like, well, maybe you got one interesting game in the Big Ten or one interesting game in the Pac-12. Like, there's a bunch of interesting games this week, which is, that's good. That's what we enjoy. We enjoy watching interesting college football, and I think there should be a bunch of it this weekend.
And it's always good when there's a nightcap. And granted, this nightcap is at 7:30, but nobody needs to be up till 2 a.m. watching college football on a Saturday night, right, Tom?
Hang on, I'm going to pull up the TV schedule right now and see if Hawaii is home. I feel like they're not, but if they are, I will. It is always one of the more upsetting parts of my day when I follow the Hawaii football team, and it's like Saturday morning they're tweeting out where they're playing, and it's like noon game at UNLV. Like, oh man, come on.
They are home to Colorado State, 11 p.m. kick.
Yes, there you go. Watch Steve Addazio get fired live on your very own TV set. That should be really, truly dynamite. Let's see. Now, the question is, where are they on TV? That is the eternal question. Spectrum pay-per-view, the Team One app. So go ahead and download the Team One app right now. I am sure that I have that on my phone already, because I have gone to extreme lengths. I am basically the college football sickos account. There you go. That's I think what we're proving today.
Yes. That will do it then. I want to thank you all for tuning in. As always, we will have some sort of a pregame show. There's a game coming up, so we'll do something for that as well. And just looking forward to a big game this weekend. Huge ramifications. Ohio State's still a huge favorite despite playing the number 7 team in the country. So we will look forward to seeing how that goes. So thank you all for joining us, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.